Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Foothill Paint Fabrication. Well, today's the day. We're finally going to box in these open C sections on the GMA body for the GTO project. But before we do that, I want to make kind of a redneck frame jig or chassis jig. I don't want to just go welding on this thing, having it just laying here on blocks or jack stands, and possibly do some sort of twist or warping into it. So I think a little work up front is well worth it. Basically what we're going to do, we're going to use my garage slab as the holding point and build from there. So let's jump in, take a look what I got set up right now, and get to work on that frame jig. All right guys, I got the chassis set pretty much at ride height. What I want, well, it's not really what I want. I want it lower in the back and I want it lower in the front, but I have to be realistic. And getting this thing so low that I'm bottoming out everywhere is just not a smart move. So as you can see right here, it's still darn low in the front on that cross member. So we may be able to adjust it later, but I was just playing with it, and this is absolutely the highest I'll ever go. So we're going to tinker with it a little bit later, but first we got to get this frame jig made up. So what I have here is some 2.5 by 2.5 by 250 wall and some 2.5 by 2.5 188 wall. I had this laying over. I think my neighbor gave me that, and that was left over for the rotisserie build. So we're going to lay those across there and tack them to the frame, and then we're going to mount those to the concrete with a hammer drill. We're going to put concrete anchors in the ground and basically anchor all this to the ground. So I need to make up some parts, so let me get those ready and I'll show you what the plan is, and then we'll get after it. All right guys, to make the legs to hold everything up and anchor it to the concrete, I've got a piece of 1.75" by 1.75" by 120 wall, I think, some old rusty crap I had laying around. I cut some pieces off of it and I made these little angle gussets, and they're going to weld on here like this at the bottom of the leg. We're going to drill through that hole into my concrete slab and put a redhead anchor down into the concrete and hold that leg tight to the ground. We're going to cut these off at a certain height, and then we're going to weld these on top just like this, and we're going to drill holes in that 2.5 by 2.5 and then set this right on top of it. That way I can loosen up the nut, raise and lower it, slide some shims in there, and then tighten it back down and hold the chassis firmly to the ground and firmly square and level. Now I originally thought, well, I'll just anchor it at perfect ride height, but it's not level. And to make this easier and easy to check and make sure everything stays square and everything, I'm going to raise this up higher so I can work on it. I need to lay on my back and weld those in. So I'm just going to raise it up an arbitrary distance and then just start making the legs. So I'm going to go ahead and bust those out real quick off camera, and I'll bring you back when we're got somewhere. All right guys, had quite a bit of success. So we've got it bolted to the ground and the 2.5 by 2.5 bolted to the legs. And then the chassis is actually clamped to it. I haven't welded it up yet, but it's looking really good. I started in this corner and just got it the length I wanted, got that set. Then I moved down to this corner and got this zeroed out. You can see that right there. We're perfectly level, straight right there. Then I worked over on this corner and I used my adjustable jack stands we made, I don't know, what was that, a year ago or whatever. And I just used them to raise and lower and then figure out the leg length. And then I just reproduced that over here. And you guys can see I've got some wood blocks. That way the level, when I lay it across there, it's laying on a nice flat, even surface. And I put chalk marks around each one just in case I knock one off. I can put it right back where it was. But it's looking really good. Now over here, I wanted the 2.5 by 2.5 way back here where the frame is perfectly flat underneath there. But that's right where the trailing arm bracket goes. And I want to do that while this thing is all, bolted down to the ground. So I moved it forward, and the frame is not, flat right there at, angles like that. So all I did was cut the legs at an angle, welded the plate on, and it's perfectly fine. The other one I had to notch it and cut it and weld it in place, but it's looking good. This is a piece of pipe here. I ran out of the square tubing, but anything will work. It's plenty stiff. So the only problem I had was this side right here. I had to pull that down to make it level. If I take that clamp off, it kind of bounces up a little bit. So we do have a little tiny bit of twist in this thing. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to weld that 2.5 by 2.5 to the chassis up front, and then I'm going to take this leg out, and I'm going to see if I can go find a big old 4x4 or something and just put it in here and pry down and try to get that to go and just lay perfectly level all the time without being forced into position. It's off just a little bit, But I mean, before I weld that boxing in, I want to go ahead and do that because I may lock in a little bit of a twist, and I don't want to do that. So let me take care of that real quick. I'll bring you back and we'll see if we can get that twist out of there. Okay, here's what I'm talking about. You can see that gap in there. That's virtually nothing. I'm an overachiever. You know, we hit it, it just bounces right there. So I'm going to pull this leg and we'll lower this piece down, and I'll see if I can jump up and down on it or whatever and get it so it's just on the money. Hopefully I don't overshoot, but yeah, let's see what we can do. All right, I got the leg out. Let's lower it down. Let's give it a little bit of love here. I don't weigh much, but all right, let's see if that did the trick. All right, second try. Let's give it a little bit more beans here and see what happens. All right, let's get this nut tightened up. Take a look. No gap. I'd say we got the twist out. Let's go ahead and get it all clamped up, double check the level, and I'll go ahead and get the back welded just like the front. And I think we're ready to move on. Okay, instead of welding down inside this radius right here, I just got a piece of scrap. I think that's 10 gauge. We're just going to put that up there, weld it to the square tube, and then tack it to the chassis. All right, that should hold it. Let me do the other side, and I think we need to check the back to make sure it's all nice and straight, and then we can get to start fitting up those pieces. Okay, we got that all welded up, so the frame is secured to the cross bracing, and that's secured to the concrete, so we are pretty solid. So if we check right here across these two body mounts, right by the spring perches here, we're at 0. But if we come back here, we are, let's see if I can get that just right. So we need to come up on the right side and go down on the left. So I'm just going to grab something, put it in there, and pry on that a little bit and see if we can't get this to 0 out. All right, let's see what we can do here. Ain't pretty, but it should work. All right, let's see what we got. Nailed it. Perfect. All right. All right, guys, we got that zeroed out, and it's looking good. I did double check across those two body mounts, make sure me twisting on it didn't affect it. It's still 0, but I did see something while I was bending on this. So I'm going to push down right here. I'm going to put the camera over here, and I want you guys to watch that section right there while I just push down maybe 50, 60 pounds. All right, I'm going to push down here. Now, I'm not pushing down that hard, maybe 50 pounds. And you can see it rising and falling right there. So we'll test it after we box it in and see if it still does that. All right, guys, let's get this frame boxed in. So you can see the two long pieces here. My friend Justin was kind enough to cut those out for me. Actually, his son Wyatt did. He's got a 5-foot by 10-foot table, so it's really easy for him to knock it out. And we're going to use those to box in that C-section right there. So you can notice that they've been sprayed. That is not weld-through primer. That is cold galvanizing spray. I've cut stuff apart, cars apart that had weld-through primer, and it burns back just like paint, and it splatters just about the same. So I like this stuff better for preventing rust, so that's what I used. And then I did trim these. Now, they don't fit perfect, but I think what we'll do is we'll tack them up, clamp them up, tack them in place, and then take the grinder and grind them until a perfect fit before we do the final weld. But they're looking really good. It'd be nice to box this C-section up in this open C-section right here and see how much strength we get out of that. So I think we're going to go ahead and start in the back. I went ahead and had 2 pieces made here for the back as well. And you can see a hole in that one right there. That's for where the bumper bolt goes through. So I'll be able to get a socket through there and tighten that up and do the adjustment. So let's go ahead and let's start back here on the short ones, just see how it goes, and then we'll move up to the bigger ones. All right, it's looking pretty good. We got it clamped. It's not perfect. It's pretty flush right here, But when I made these drawings, I only made it off the driver's side, and then I just had 2 cut. Well, it turns out this side isn't exactly like the other side, so it doesn't fit exactly the same. The other side fits really nice. So I hammered and dollied the shape, and it's pretty puckered and everything, kind of rough stamp, but I think we can make it work. So it goes along here, it's gonna weld there, and then it comes up here, and it's got a little jog in it right here, so you can see how that flares out. So I put a little bend in it right there, and we'll weld it there, and then I cut it back so I can get my hand in there and get the body mount located and everything. So I think we'll just kind of tack it, squeeze it, push it, hammer it, and just keep tacking it till it all fits together really nice. And you can see I've got the jack stands right here. They're not really carrying any weight. I've just got them screwed up to here, so if I can tell if it rises up off there, I know that it's starting to twist on me. But I've got one on each side in the exact same spot, so I'll keep an eye on those as well. Let me grab the welder and start doing some tacking, and then we'll see if we can't get this all fixed on here really nice. All right, here we go. That's looking pretty good. Time to lay on my back, get the bottom. All right, let's take a close-up look at it. All right, that came out pretty nice. It's pretty tight and smooth across there. A little bit of a gap right there. I'll put a clamp on it, put another tack, but it's looking pretty good. Let's check out underneath. All right, overhead welding's not my favorite, but I think I can get it done. There's always a grinder, right? So it's looking pretty good, pretty tight. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm gonna go ahead and get the other side tacked up, and then we'll get some welding done, and I'll bring you back. We'll check them out. All right, guys, I got the other side tacked up, and I was waiting for everything to cool down a little bit so I could start welding. I went ahead and ran a center line string line all the way down through there. I found the center right here, used a plumb bob to line up the string, and then I just kind of clamped it back to the bench back here. And then I measured each direction because this didn't feel right to me. I measured diagonally and it doesn't come up square. I put a square on the corners and they're both out, but they're out differently. So I'm like, what's going on here? So measuring from the outside to the string, outside to the string on both sides, it's within a 1/16 of an inch. So I think this was just kind of, stuck together a little crooked. I don't know, but it fit on the car fine. I'm just gonna leave these marks. So you see I marked the center line right there with the chalk, and I'm gonna go ahead and mark the center line on both of these frame jigs right here. I'll use a plumb bob and find that and mark that center line so I can pull the string out of the way. And that'll give me a nice reference in the future, and so I can kind of keep going back to that. Now I did measure diagonally across here. These are exactly the same. So this area is nice and square, so we'll double check that later. But yeah, it was interesting that this could be off, because I thought something's not right. Maybe I should try to bend it before I go any farther welding, but I can't see any way to make it any better without cutting that back piece off and moving everything around, which it fit on the car before, so I'm not going to get too picky on this thing. All right, guys, got that all welded, ground, and sanded. Well, for the most part, I ran out of grinding disc. Was on my last one, and I found a little one, and I ground that thing down to the nub, and I don't have another new one. So we still have some grinding to do underneath, which we can do when it's on the rotisserie. That's no big deal. But it came out pretty nice. Pretty happy with it. Now, I just put the level across there, and it's reading exactly the same as it was when we started, so it did not twist this way. But I did take a measurement before we started, and I think this is a 1/16 of an inch higher than it was. And I think that's possibly when I was tacking across here. I did tack it, and then I tacked at the top back there where it hooks on the side plate. and that could have shrunk and pulled that up. And I did both sides exactly the same. I want to do them both exactly the same, make sure I didn't induce any kind of, twist or anything in it. But I mean, I can push up and down on this. It's not that big a deal. And I'm pretty sure the body adds strength back here instead of the other way around. I think the body actually makes this stronger so the bumpers can attach instead of the chassis giving the body some strength. But either way, I'm not too worried about it. It's looking really good. And we got it all boxed in real nice and clean. So that's going to be really good to have. So let's go ahead and move over to the middle and get to work on that. I will be a lot more cautious than I was back here. This, I had a lot of wiggle room. Up there in the middle, it's a lot more critical. And like I said, I did measure everything, so I know what it should be when we're done, and we should be able to tell. So I'm going to take a couple of other measurements, lay straight edges across here to remind me what it looks like, and then when we're done, I'll be able to put the straight edge on there and see where we're at. So I've got this one clamped up, ready to tack. So I'm just going to kind of tack that in place real quick, and then we'll move over and we'll shoot some video of getting that one in. All right, we got that tacked in. I just double checked and nothing moved, so we're good. So what I did was I just started in the middle, top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom. I just went back and forth just to be extra careful, and clamped and moved. So that's what I'm going to do over here on this side. I had to put a clamp and kind of pull that down to meet it, but it's just a lot of little clamping, just moving a little bit at a time. But I'm going to put the camera down, we'll speed through this and get this thing tacked up, then we'll double check the chassis again. All right, it's on there. I'm going to double check it real quick. It shouldn't move. The other side didn't move. We've got quite a bit of a lip right here. So I'm going to take the grinder. I got my big grinder out. I hate that thing, but I'm going to grind that down until we're flush so we can get a nice weld on there. It'd be way too much material. So let me bust that out, maybe make sure we didn't move at all. And then I'm going to get this ground up and I'll bring you back. We'll take a kind of close look at how it's doing, how it's laying in there. And then we'll get this thing finished welded. All right, guys, everything's checking out. It's looking good, real happy. Got it tacked in there, got it ground. I don't like that, that big grinder, but boy, it gets with it. It knocked that 1/8 inch lip. It was sticking up just a little bit. I did it on both sides, so they're both flush, but it really knocks that down really quick. So nothing moved or anything on either one. So the next step is to full weld it. I'm not going to show you guys any of that. That's just a long time of me welding a little bit and then jump back and over here and welding back and forth, back and forth. So the plan is I'm going to weld in the middle, probably no more than 1 inch, 1.5 inches at a time. I'll weld on top, weld on bottom, go over to this side, do the same thing, and I'm going to do it just like I tacked it. I'm going to work from the middle to each end. So I'll do that, come back over to this side, go about 1 foot away, weld, and then go underneath and weld, then jump to the other side, and then come on this side about 1 foot away, and then we're just going to keep going back and forth, let it cool, plenty in between, and try not to build any heat into this thing and cause some sort of problem. So I'll bring you back when it's all welded. We'll take a look at it. All right, guys, got it all welded. My knees are killing me from crawling around underneath this thing, but it's all done. Came out pretty good. It took quite a while. It's getting pretty late and I'm starving and it's cold in here. So I'm going to call it a day, but it came out pretty good. Not my best welds ever, but you know, when you're stitching like that, you know, inch and a half at a time, back and forth, it's hard to get in a good rhythm and get a good bead down. But hey, it'll all look good once I grind it, and that'll have to be tomorrow because I need to go eat something and get off my feet. So I'll see you guys in the morning. All right, guys, it's the next day. It's no longer morning. I got out of here early, spent over 2.5 hours grinding, sanding. It was just miserable on my back, on my knees. It was just terrible. Got a pretty good pile of sanding debris right there. And the grinder disc right here, the one on the right, that was a 9-inch disc when I started. So, you know, it took its toll on both me and the grinders, but we got it done and it's looking really good. Let me climb in here and I'll show you. So it's not perfect, it's just frame, never going to be seen unless I put mirrors under the car. And it came out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. Even the underside I got pretty good. When it's on the rotisserie, I guess I can beautify it a little bit more if I need to before we spray epoxy, but everything seemed to work out really well. And I went ahead and measured diagonally again between the holes, and it's still spot on right where I left it. So I feel good about that. Now, I did push down on the back there to see how much it would raise and fall right here. And it still goes up and down, but it takes a lot more pressure to get it to move. So we did increase the strength through here a little bit. But a lot of this is just try to keep it from twisting, right? And to that end, I went ahead and put some tape on here. And you can see that tape is just right on the edge right there on both sides. So what I want to do is, since I don't know if all that welding caused this frame to twist and the jig is just holding it, keeping it from twisting, we're going to go ahead and put the camera right there, and I'm going to go ahead and cut those tabs loose on each side and see if this thing, you know, jumps or moves or anything, and then you know, just kind of cross our fingers and hope it doesn't. I don't think it will, but we'll find out right now. All right, cross your fingers, guys. Well, didn't move. Let's check the other side. All right, that jumped a little bit, but it wasn't this. It was the jig. It was pulled a little bit. So I'm going to recheck diagonally to make sure this thing didn't move. Really, I don't think this jig could have held it, but it feels pretty good. It's up a little bit here like it was earlier, but if I slide this back where it was, I think it's right on the money. So I think we're looking good. That thing didn't move hardly at all. So let me check a few things out and I'll bring you right back. All right, I measured diagonally. We're still right on the money. And as you can see right there, spot on level. So nothing moved, nothing twisted, nothing got out of square. I checked my little tape over here. You can see it's just right on the edge. So, I mean, we nailed it. No, no warpage, no twisting, no nothing. We got both front and back boxing in without causing trouble. So I'll take that as a win. Now we can start thinking about, you know, building out the back here with the suspension and everything for the rear end, but that'll be another video. I'm really happy to get this done. I was really dreading crawling underneath that thing this morning, but I just grit my teeth, stayed at it till it was done, and it came out really well. Really happy to get this knocked out. Okay guys, that wraps up the video on boxing in the frame for the GTO project, and we made our own DIY kind of frame chassis jig here, and I think it helped quite a bit. Now I did quite a bit of welding yesterday, and I could have just stitch welded it. I didn't have to full weld it. I could have welded an inch, skipped 2 or 3 inches, welded an inch, and done it that way. But the rest of the chassis is full welded, so I wanted to full weld it, kind of make it all the same, and plus when we paint it, it's going to be that much cleaner. So, you know, the extra work was worth it. The extra grinding, I don't know about that, but it's all done. I'm glad to get that out of my way. So the jig worked out really well, and I think it's going to come in handy when we're setting up the new bracing and the rear suspension. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. That'll be probably, I don't know about the next video, but it should be coming up really soon. Thanks for joining me here at Foothill Paint Fabrication. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Mash that bell and drop me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. We'll see you on the next one.